Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I'm a nutrition entrepreneur. I spent 7 years as a side hustler before diving into entrepreneurship full time. Before making the leap, I was bringing in 6 figures through my side hustle. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello, and welcome to the 76th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Counseling Skills to Grow Your Practice. Today, I will be interviewing Stephanie Nataris. Stephanie is a dietitian with a master's in counseling and founder of the Dietitian Counseling Skills Program. She has developed a counseling framework specific to dietitians to teach essential skills that can help their clients to get better results and enhance their client retention. Welcome, Stephanie. Let's dive right in with our first question. Can you let our listeners know a little bit more about yourself and how you got into the counseling space?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Katie. I'm really excited to be talking to you today. So I'm an accredited practicing dietitian from Australia, which is the equivalent of a registered dietitian. And I also specialize in renal nutrition, and I have a master's of counseling, as you mentioned. And I'm really committed to helping us as a profession gain the skills that we need to really help people make successful eating behavior change. And I'm also heavily involved in research around what are the best methods to be using to be teaching dietitians the right counseling strategies, but then also as we're teaching them, how do we continue to assess and nurture them within a workplace so these skills can be maintained and dietitians can feel like they're easy enough to be implemented. How I got into the counseling space, probably in my first year of working as a new dietitian, I was really excited and enthusiastic and had all this amazing education to give to my clients. And I just realized that although I was trying my best, I really felt like there was some type of disconnect with my own skills because clients just either weren't making changes or they weren't coming back after certain consultations. And I know where I was working at the time, we had like a supervisory framework set up, and I had a couple of supervisors, and some would say, oh, that's okay, the client's just not ready to change, there's nothing you can do. But I had this really insightful supervisor that sat me down and really asked questions to draw out what I was experiencing. And we got to the conclusion that I was getting so frustrated and not feeling very fulfilled because I felt in myself I could be asking things differently. Like there is this whole world of counseling and psychology, and that's actually what we're doing when we're asking people to change their eating behaviors. And I just don't know how to do it. So that's how I ended up going to do a master's in counseling, and just learned such amazing skills and was able to apply some of them to the dietetics process, our nutrition care process, and just transform the experience that I've been able to give my clients since then.
Yeah, that is so awesome. And I loved how you shared that you recognized that you didn't know how to do something. So you went back and you furthered your education on your own. You went back and you got your master's in counseling so that way you could help people better. And I think that's such a good message for everyone listening, because we all come out of school with a very general skill set, right? And depending on the direction we go, working with clients or doing different things, we might feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have these skills that I need. But I tell my children this, everything is figure outable. There are lots of resources I know we're going to talk a little bit more about your program, Stephanie, but from school to online programs, courses, there are so many resources out there this day and age to help us to get the skills so that we can best, do better at our practice or whatever we're doing. So thank you so much for sharing. I love that.
Oh, my pleasure. And I completely agree with you too. I think that, we have to have this mindset of continued learning and growth, because we just can't learn everything that we need to be successful in 5 or 6 years of study.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit more about your counseling framework and how it's helped clients to get better results?
Yes, sure. So the counseling framework that I use really looks at the client experience and the journey of eating behavior change from when people are thinking about it to when people need to actually do it and do it long term. So the framework that I use, I've actually validated it as well. So before I turned the process into an online program, I trialed my framework with dietitians in Australia and was able to evaluate it and publish the framework as well. And how it helps clients get better results is that by using a counseling framework that you can individualize to different clients, you don't have to pigeonhole yourself to only have the skills to help people that are ready to change. Because there's a lot of people that come to see dietitians, and the majority of them, even if they're paying you, so you think they might be ready, they actually may not have done the mindset work before that. And this is where the counseling framework comes in, because it gives you the skills to help your clients from whatever point of the journey they're on. And over 75% of the time, I think the statistics is 80% of the time, people need help with that mindset first before they change behavior. So that's how it really helps get clients results, because you start to help them really link how changing their nutrition can actually give them a better life to meet the goals that they really want to meet in themselves, whatever they are. And nutrition is that vehicle. So it's a very, I guess I would describe the framework as it's helping you become really effective in your language with how to get clients excited about change or motivated to change, and then how to do it as easily as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said, mindset first. I think whether or not we're talking about our clients or ourselves in our own business, so much of what we do has to do with mindset. It's this kind of like underlying piece that's the basis of everything that we do. So I love that you've been able to recognize and incorporate the mindset piece, and even that you took the steps to validate, get published, do the research to make sure like, okay, this framework is really solid. So awesome. So can you tell us more about how counseling can improve client retention and how it's helped you to grow your own practice?
Yeah, sure. So with client retention, it's so largely reflected on the client experience that you're giving.
Yeah. Yep.
And the client experience you give is how you consult. And that is why the right communication and counseling skills make a really big difference, because what we know from the research and also from my own experience, because I've been practicing for 12 years now with clients too, so I'll marry the two together. What clients really want from us is for their nutrition professional or their dietitian to be extremely collaborative, to be understanding, to be motivational, and to also help them with problem solving, and to really have faith that they can make changes. So when you're incorporating all of this together in your consulting process, people want to come back to you because they've built that relationship with you, which only comes from your counseling skills, that even if they're not making progress super fast, they're making some progress and they start to trust you. And if you get them hooked that way, they're only going to talk positively about you and give you really good testimonials. And that's how it helps to grow your practice. For me personally, in my practice, so I see people with living with renal disease from the spectrum of, before dialysis and on dialysis, but I'm really specializing myself as pre-dialysis now. And where I've been able to grow our practice is in the way that I find out people's why, because we tend to talk a lot about nutrition terms. If you do this clinical parameter may improve, but we need to go that one step deeper of, well, what do you really, what's motivating you? What would drive you to make these changes? And I'd actually did one of my theses on this topic, and found out it's like I did market research, but through like an academic pathway. And I found out exactly what people why people were willing to change their eating behaviors. And Katie, the only reason people that didn't went on dialysis yet was because they wanted to avoid it. That was the only motivating factor. It wasn't about improving blood pressure or improving blood sugar levels, because these things, sometimes people don't even feel them in their body if they're high or not, unless they're really, really bad. But they wanted to avoid that negative outcome on their life. So I completely reframed the way I talked to these clients in our first consult to hook them in as to how I could help them get where they want to be, or at least delay dialysis. Some people can't avoid it, but they can delay it. And then I trained everyone around me to talk in the same way. And then we took out, I think the year I inherited that clinic, the no-show rate was about 50%. So half of the clients booked in never showed up. And then within 12 months, we got it down to about 5%.
That's awesome.
And this is not program-based. It's not cash pay. It's funded by government programs. So it's like as you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. And I like how you said, starting with figuring out their why. And actually everything you're talking about, like, man, this sounds like how I do business coaching, starting with your why, working on your mindset. And that is a good reminder to bring back into how we provide care and how much impact that we could really have on these patients that we want to help. So really, It sounds like it all comes down to improving the client experience. When you do that, they'll come back, they'll have great testimonials, tell their friends, and that can continue to help you to build your practice. And it all comes down to helping people where they're at, improving your counseling skills so that you could really help and impact them. So
yeah, absolutely. And, it might sound like you might be thinking, oh, it's a bit of a complicated process. How do I do that? But it's it's the right questions, and then being comfortable with how to follow up on their responses, and still keeping within our scope of practice as nutrition professionals and dietitians. So I think it can be so simple yet so effective when you've got the right blueprint.
Yeah. Well, what are some actionable next steps that a dietitian can take today to start to improve their own counseling skills?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give a few, Katie, for you. So I think it's really starting with their why as well. So I think, a lot of dietitians may be asking their clients, what's brought you in to see me today, or what you want to achieve by working together, but just spending that extra 5 or 10 minutes, just going a little bit deeper, because people will always tell you that first surface goal that they think they need to be achieving from what their referrers might have said or what from diet culture might be saying to them. But there's always something deeper that they want. And it's generally external to nutrition. It could be, for example, in the example I used with my clientele, like when I started digging deeper, it was, well, I really don't want to go on dialysis. Well, why? Well, I'm not going to be able to be around for my family as much. I'm going to be spending a lot more time away from them. How will I possibly contribute to my family? And if I get on dialysis, it means I'm really sick. So what does that mean for my own longevity? Like, these are really big issues. And if you're comfortable to just sit with whatever they're saying and just ask some follow-up questions, okay, so tell me, why would this be important? And then it's become so much easier to move into, well, what are you willing to do to get there? Or what do you think needs to change? And then you have hooked them in, because you start to use the language that they're telling you that's really important to them. So I think just going a little bit further with your questions as to what they want to achieve and why, and how their life would be different. They're my 3 favorite questions that I ask everybody. And then probably some extra action steps would be around not giving too many solutions, like just let people work on a couple of things at a time, because I think a lot of your audience, Katie, would be having their side hustle and knowing how overwhelming it could be trying to think that you've got to do everything. So you need someone to, like, 1 or 2 things a week or a month, and then mastering them is the best thing for change, for behavior change. So we need to think about it in the same way with our clients. So give less, and don't be worried that you're not giving enough value. Because if you've prioritized in your mind what's going to get your clients the best return on investment, the top 1 to 3 things, and they go and they do them and they find that they're confident with it because it's easy to do, they're going to come back.
That's good. I'm taking all these different notes for myself. This is so good. So,
thanks.
So I heard you say, start with their why, go a little bit deeper, give less, like really focus on what's going to help them and not the overwhelm. These are good.
Yeah. And if they do show that, because everyone's got barriers, it's just a matter of when they tell you, because they're going to come up at some point. So it's when they tell you and when they start creating problems for them wanting to make changes. So don't be too scared to ask people about those barriers, but in such a respectful way of, what do you think's getting in the way of you meeting the X, like the goal that you want to achieve, and why haven't you been able to achieve this yet? Because this is going to tell us a lot about how much we can slow down or how much we need to speed up and what the client actually needs.
Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. I'm like I said, I'm learning so much. And I really think what you're talking about applies for the dietitian side hustlers in their own career, in their counseling skills. Like there's a lot of overlap in what you're talking about. So this is so great. So can you share a little bit more about your own journey on how you ended up creating this program and really just how you've invested into yourself as an entrepreneur and a side hustler?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So when I finished my master's in counselling, I was invited by the organisation I was working for to create a counselling skills program we kind of work in districts in Australia. So we have like 5 or 6 facilities within an organisation. So I created a program for the entire organisation for the dietitians, and I pretty much handpicked the counselling strategies that I had learnt that I felt could be applicable to our practice, because not all of them are applicable. And I didn't focus on just one model, which I think makes a big difference. I focused on what skills do we need to really help people change, and I pulled the skills from lots of different models and I've put them into the program. And that's how I've created it. And that's it's been evaluated as well. And then also now that I was always thinking to myself, how could this be sustainable if I continue to run this face-to-face? And it's just not. And I got such encouraging feedback from the first time I ran it and then the second time I ran it. And that gave me the belief that, dietitians are really enjoying this. I have to step out of Sydney, right? So that's what made me create the online version of it, which is what's been published, but now it's just so much bigger and better. So I really focus on the implements. I teach how to what the counseling skills you should be using to be really effective and efficient. But then how do you actually do it? Because that's the gap. You can have all this amazing knowledge and then you get overwhelmed, or you ask a question and then your client tells you something you're not expecting and you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, I don't have another question to follow up. So it's evolved into this massive implementation focus and support along the way. In terms of how I've invested in myself, I think 2 things. Probably personally, I believe that what I'm doing is helpful, which helps because, and then I've had to invest in business coaching and support. I did that from the very beginning because I still have my practice with my clients, and I'm also, I didn't mention this, but I'm also doing a PhD looking into the impact that dietitians can have on client outcomes, and then which behavior change strategies give the best outcomes. So, and everyone's busy, and and my schedule's also quite full. So I just needed someone to help me prioritize what to do. And I've been doing that since the beginning.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I think it's vital. I couldn't have done any of this by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared before on the podcast, I wouldn't be where I am either without business coaching. I definitely can't speak enough for it. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Stephanie. I've learned so much from you, and I know that our podcast listeners are going to love the show. So, can you let people know where they can find you online if they want to keep learning from you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is Stephanie Notaris. And I'm also on Facebook as Stephanie Notaris Dietitian. So if you're more of a Facebook user, just send me a friend request. And I've also got a community of like a Facebook community for dietitians counseling skills, where I do a lot of training for free, just to give dietitians some resources to start thinking about what's in their control to change in their practice.
So, well, I'll make sure that I include those in our show notes so people can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, guys. Be sure to head on over to the Dietitian Side Hustle website at dietitiansidehustle.com and check out our coaching page to learn about all the ways that we can work together. Have an amazing day, and I'm so proud of you for taking the initiative to listen to this podcast. Now go out there and get it done. Bye, guys.